Hello and welcome. Today, we have a story about a very famous woman. Her name was Amelia Earhart. She was a pilot. A pilot is a person who flies an airplane. Amelia loved to fly. She was brave and she had big dreams. Her story is one of adventure and mystery. Before we begin our story, I have a question for you. Do you like to travel? Where is one place in the world you want to visit? It can be a city, a mountain, or a beach. Please tell me your answer in the comments below. Now let us begin the story of Amelia Earhart. Chapter 1. A Girl Named Amelia. Amelia Earhart was born in the United States of America. She was born in a state called Kansas. The year was 1897. That was a very long time ago. In 1897, there were no big airplanes like we have today. Life was very different. Amelia grew up in a big house with her family. She had a younger sister named Muriel. Amelia and Muriel were very close. They were best friends. They played together all the time. Amelia was the older sister. She was the leader. She was always the one with the new ideas for games and adventures. Amelia was not a quiet girl. She did not like to sit inside and play with dolls. She loved to be outside. She loved to run and climb trees. She loved to explore the world around her. She was full of energy and curiosity. She always wanted to know how things worked. She wanted to see what was over the next hill. Her parents loved her very much. Her mother was also named Amelia. Her father's name was Edwin. Edwin worked for a railroad company. Because of his job, the family moved many times. They lived in different cities. This was sometimes hard for Amelia and her sister. They had to make new friends and go to new schools. But it also showed Amelia a lot of the country. She saw new places and met new people. One day, when Amelia was a young girl, she saw an airplane for the first time. It was at a state fair. A state fair is a big outdoor event with food, games, and shows. This airplane was very small and simple. It was not like the planes we see today. The pilot was a man. He was flying in the sky. Many people were excited to see the airplane. They looked up at the sky and watched. But Amelia was not very excited. She thought the plane looked like it was made of old wood and wire. It did not look very strong or safe. She did not think, "I want to fly that one day." Her dream of flying had not started yet. At that time, she was just a girl who loved adventure on the ground. She did not know that her future was in the sky. Amelia was a good student. She loved to read books. She read books about adventure and science. She was very smart and she asked many questions. Her teachers liked her, but sometimes she was a little bit of a troublemaker because she had so much energy. As she grew older, she continued to be brave and independent. An independent person likes to do things by themselves. They have their own ideas. Amelia was very independent. She did not want to just follow what other girls were doing. She wanted to find her own path. This spirit of adventure and independence would be very important later in her life. It would help her become one of the most famous women in the world. Chapter 2. The First Flight. After Amelia finished school, the world changed. A big war started in Europe. It was called World War I. Amelia wanted to help. She went to Canada to become a nurse's aide. A nurse's aide helps nurses take care of sick and injured people. She worked in a hospital for soldiers who were hurt in the war. Working in the hospital was very hard. She saw many sad things. She worked long hours and was very tired. But she learned that she was strong. She learned that she could do difficult things and help people. During her time in Canada, she often went to a nearby airfield to watch the pilots. An airfield is a place where airplanes take off and land. These pilots were training for the war. They flew small, fast planes. This time, when Amelia watched the planes, something was different. She was not a little girl anymore. She saw the beauty and the freedom of flying. She watched the planes dance in the sky. A small seed of an idea started to grow in her mind. The idea was about flying. After the war ended, Amelia went to California to be with her parents. One day, her father took her to an air show. An air show is like a party for airplanes. Pilots do amazing tricks in the sky. They fly very fast, they turn and they spin. Amelia watched with wide eyes. She was amazed. At the air show there was a pilot who gave rides in his airplane. For $10, you could fly in the plane for about 10 minutes. Amelia knew she had to do it. She had to know what it felt like to be in the sky. She gave the man her $10 and climbed into the small open airplane. The engine started. It was very loud. The plane began to move along the ground. It went faster and faster. And then it happened. The plane lifted off the ground. It was flying. Amelia was flying. She looked down at the world below. The houses and cars looked like tiny toys. The fields looked like a green and brown blanket. She could feel the wind on her face. She was not scared. She felt a wonderful feeling. It was a feeling of freedom and peace. She felt like a bird. In that moment, everything changed for Amelia. As soon as the plane was in the air, she knew. She knew what she wanted to do with her life. She looked at the pilot and said to herself, "I have to learn how to fly." The 10-minute flight was over very quickly, but for Amelia, it was the beginning of her real life. The seed of an idea was now a big, strong tree. Her dream was born. Chapter 3. The Yellow Canary. Amelia had a dream, but a dream is not enough. To become a pilot, she needed two things. She needed lessons, and she needed an airplane. Both of these things cost a lot of money. Amelia's family did not have a lot of extra money, so Amelia knew she had to work hard to pay for her dream. She found a job working at a telephone company. She also did other small jobs. She saved every penny she earned. She did not buy new clothes or go out with friends. All of her money was for flying. She found a female pilot who could teach her. Her name was Netta Snook. In those days it was very rare to see a female pilot. Most pilots were men, but Netta was a great teacher, and she agreed to teach Amelia. Amelia's first lesson was exciting. She learned how the controls of the airplane worked. She learned how to make the plane go up and down, and how to turn left and right. It was not easy. There was a lot to learn, but Amelia was a very good student. She listened carefully to Netta. She practiced very hard. She loved every minute of it. After many lessons, Amelia wanted her own airplane. She wanted a plane that was just for her. She looked and looked. Finally, she found one. It was a small, used airplane. It was bright yellow. Because of its color, Amelia called it the canary. A canary is a small yellow bird. Her airplane was her yellow canary. Buying the plane was a big decision. It was very expensive. Her mother helped her pay for some of it. Amelia used all of her savings. Now she had her own plane. She was so happy and proud. She spent all her free time with the yellow canary. She flew it as much as she could. She wanted to become a better and better pilot. She practiced taking off and landing again and again. She flew high in the sky and low over the fields. The sky was her new home. Amelia also wanted to look like a pilot. She bought a leather jacket, a helmet, and goggles. These were the clothes that pilots wore. When she put on her pilot clothes and climbed into her yellow canary, She felt like she could do anything. Amelia started to become a good pilot. She was not just flying for fun. She wanted to be the best. She started to fly in air shows, just like the one she had visited with her father. She also used her plane to set records. A record is the best achievement in something. She flew her plane higher than any other female pilot had flown before. She set a new altitude record for women. Altitude means how high you are in the sky. People started to notice Amelia. They saw this young, brave woman with her yellow airplane. She was different. She was doing something that most women did not do. But Amelia did not care about that. She only cared about flying. Her yellow canary was her partner in adventure. It was the first step on a long and amazing journey. Chapter 4. A Passenger Across the Ocean. Amelia was becoming a well-known pilot, but she was not famous yet. She was still working and flying in her free time. Then, one day in 1928, she received a phone call. This phone call would change her life forever. The call was from a man who had an exciting idea. A rich woman wanted to be the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic is a very big ocean between America and Europe. Flying across it was very dangerous. Several people had already died trying. The rich woman bought a big plane for the trip. The plane was named Friendship. But her family was very worried. They told her not to go. It was too dangerous. So the woman decided not to fly. But the plane was ready. The men organizing the trip needed to find another woman. They wanted a woman who was a pilot. They wanted a woman who was smart and brave. They looked for the right person. Someone told them about Amelia Earhart. They called her and asked her a question. They asked, "Would you like to be the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean?" Amelia was very excited. This was a huge opportunity. She said yes immediately. But there was one important detail. She would not be the pilot of the plane. Two men would be the pilots. Their names were Wilmer Stultz and Lewis Gordon. They would fly the plane. Amelia's job was to be the commander of the flight and to keep the flight log. The flight log is a book where you write down important information about the trip, like the time, speed, and weather. Amelia Earhart was a little disappointed. She wanted to fly the plane herself. She was a good pilot. But she knew this was a very important chance. So she agreed to go as a passenger. She said she would be like a sack of potatoes. She meant she would just be carried along. The journey began in Newfoundland, a part of Canada. The plane, the Friendship, was a seaplane. This means it could take off and land on water. The weather was bad. They had to wait for many days for the weather to get better. Finally, the sky was clear. It was time to go. The flight was long and difficult. It took more than 20 hours. The weather was often bad. There was a lot of fog and rain. They could not see the water below them. The radio did not work well, so they could not talk to anyone on the ground. It was just the three of them in a small plane over a huge, empty ocean. Amelia sat in the back of the plane. She watched the pilots work. She wrote in the flight log. She looked out the window at the endless gray water and the clouds. She thought about the danger. But she also felt the great adventure of it all. After many long hours, they saw land. It was Wales, a part of Great Britain. They had made it. They had crossed the Atlantic Ocean. They landed the seaplane on the water near a small town. When they arrived, they became famous overnight. Everyone was talking about the flight, but most of the attention was on Amelia. She was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. There were parades and parties. Newspapers wrote stories about her. They called her Lady Lindy. because her journey was similar to a famous male pilot named Charles Lindbergh. Amelia was now a celebrity. A celebrity is a very famous person, but she did not feel like she deserved all the attention. She told everyone, "Stoltz did all the flying. I was just baggage." She was happy about the trip, but she was not satisfied. In her heart, she knew she wanted to cross the ocean again, but next time she wanted to do it by herself. She wanted to be the one flying the plane. The friendship flight made her famous, but it also gave her a new, bigger dream. Chapter 5. Alone in the Sky. Being famous was a new experience for Amelia. She wrote a book about her trip on the Friendship. She gave speeches all over the country. She talked about flying and about airplanes. She wanted everyone, especially women, to know that they could do exciting and important things. She also got married. She married a man named George Putnam. He was the man who had helped organize the Friendship flight. He was a book publisher and a very smart businessman. He loved Amelia very much. He believed in her dreams. He helped her plan her future in aviation. Aviation is the world of airplanes and flying. But Amelia never forgot her real goal. She did not want to be famous for being a passenger. She wanted to be famous for being a pilot. She wanted to fly across the Atlantic Ocean alone. This was a very dangerous idea. Only one person, Charles Lindbergh, had done it successfully. Many others had tried and failed. Some had disappeared and were never seen again. George supported her dream. They started to plan the flight very carefully. They bought a special airplane for Amelia. It was a beautiful single-engine plane. It was painted bright red. Amelia loved this plane. It was fast and strong. The plan was to fly from Newfoundland, Canada, to Paris, France. This was the same path that Charles Lindbergh had taken. In May of 1932, 5 years after her first trip across the ocean, Amelia was ready. She flew her red plane to Newfoundland and waited for good weather. Finally, on May 20th, the time was right. She said goodbye to her team and climbed into her plane. She was all alone. In front of her was the big, dark Atlantic Ocean. The flight was much more difficult than she expected. Soon after she took off, her altimeter broke. The altimeter is an instrument that tells the pilot how high the plane is. Without it, she did not know if she was flying too high or too low. Then the weather turned bad. She flew into a big storm with lightning and strong winds. The wind pushed her small plane around like a toy. Ice began to form on the wings of the plane. Ice on the wings is very, very dangerous. It can make the plane too heavy and cause it to crash into the ocean. Amelia had to fly lower, closer to the water, to try and melt the ice, but it was dark and she could not see the waves. She was flying blind, just above the cold, angry ocean. She was tired and she was scared, but she did not give up. Later in the flight, another problem happened. Fuel started to leak into the cockpit, the area where the pilot sits. The smell was very strong. Even worse, she saw flames coming from the engine. The engine was on fire. For a moment she thought it was the end, but the flames went out by themselves. She was exhausted. She had been flying for more than 14 hours. She knew she could not reach Paris. Her plane was having too many problems. She just needed to find land. Any land. Then, through the clouds, she saw it. It was green. It was land. She had crossed the ocean. She saw a field and decided to land there. She brought her red plane down safely in a cow pasture. A pasture is a field where cows eat grass. A farmer saw the plane land. He ran over to see what happened. He saw Amelia get out of the plane. He asked, "Have you come from far away?" Amelia smiled. She was tired but very happy. She said, "From America." She had not landed in France. She was in a field in Northern Ireland, but it did not matter. She had done it. She had flown across the Atlantic Ocean by herself. She was the first woman in history to do it. This time, she was not a passenger. She was the pilot. She was the hero. Chapter 6. A Global Star. When the world learned that Amelia Earhart had flown solo across the Atlantic, she became more than just a celebrity. She became a global superstar. She was one of the most famous people in the world. She returned to the United States to a hero's welcome. There were huge parades in New York City and Washington, D.C. Millions of people came out to see her. They cheered and waved flags. The President of the United States gave her a special medal. He said she was a great American hero. Amelia was now a symbol. A symbol is something that represents a big idea. Amelia was a symbol of courage. She was a symbol of adventure. She was also a powerful symbol for women everywhere. She showed the world that women could be just as brave, strong, and capable as men. She proved that women could achieve great things in any field, even in dangerous fields like aviation. Amelia used her fame for good. She did not just sit and enjoy being famous. She worked very hard. She traveled all over the country and gave speeches. She talked to young people, especially young women. She encouraged them to follow their dreams. She told them not to let anyone say, "You can't do that because you are a girl." Her message was simple. If you work hard and believe in yourself, you can do anything. She also worked to make flying more popular and safer. She believed that airplanes would be very important for the future. She helped start new airlines that would carry passengers across the country. She also designed her own line of clothing for active women who wanted to live a life of adventure like she did. She continued to fly and set new records. She became the first person to fly solo from Hawaii to California. This was a very long and dangerous flight over the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific is even bigger than the Atlantic. Many people said it was impossible, but Amelia did it. She also became the first person to fly solo from Los Angeles to Mexico City. With every flight, her fame grew. She was admired by people of all ages. Children looked up to her. Adults respected her. She was intelligent, charming, and brave. She was a new kind of hero for a new age, but even with all of her success, Amelia was not finished. She still had one more dream. It was the biggest and most difficult dream of all. She looked at the globe, the map of the whole world. She had crossed the Atlantic. She had crossed the Pacific. Now, she wanted to do something that no one had ever done before. She wanted to fly all the way around the world. This would be her final challenge. It would be the greatest flight in history. It was a long, difficult, and dangerous journey. But Amelia Earhart was never afraid of a challenge. She started to plan for the biggest adventure of her life. Chapter 7. The Final Challenge. Flying around the world was a massive undertaking. It was not just a long flight. It was many long flights, one after another. The journey would be almost 29,000 miles long. Amelia and her husband, George Putnam, began to plan every detail. First, they needed a new airplane. Her little red plane was good for crossing an ocean, but it was not big enough for a trip around the world. They needed a bigger plane that could carry a lot of extra fuel. They found the perfect plane. It was a modern twin-engine plane. It was made of metal and looked like it was from the future. It was one of the most advanced planes of its time. Amelia called it her flying laboratory. She loved this new plane. It was silver and powerful. A long journey like this was too difficult for one person. Amelia needed a navigator. A navigator is a person who helps the pilot find the way. They use maps, stars, and special instruments to make sure the plane is going in the right direction. For this trip, Amelia chose one of the best navigators in the world. His name was Fred Noonan. The plan was to fly around the world at the equator. The equator is the imaginary line that goes around the middle of the Earth. This was the longest possible route. In March of 1937, they were ready for their first attempt. They decided to fly from east to west. They started in California and flew to Hawaii. The first part of the trip was successful, but when they tried to take off from Hawaii to continue their journey, something went wrong. As the plane was moving down the runway to take off, Amelia lost control. The plane swerved and a wing hit the ground. The plane was badly damaged. The landing gear collapsed. Fuel started to leak out. It was a serious accident. Luckily, Amelia and Fred were not hurt, but the plane could not fly. The first attempt to fly around the world was over before it really began. Amelia was very disappointed. Some people told her to give up. They said it was too dangerous. They said she was lucky to be alive and she should not try again. But Amelia was not a person who gave up easily. She was determined to complete her dream. She said, "I have a feeling that there is just about one more good flight left in my system, and I hope this trip is it." The plane was sent back to California by ship. It took a long time and a lot of money to repair it, but Amelia and George made sure it was fixed perfectly. 2 months later, they were ready to try again. This time, they decided to change the plan. They would fly from west to east. They thought this might be better because of the weather patterns around the world. The journey would start in Miami, Florida. From there, they would fly to South America, then across the Atlantic to Africa. Then they would fly over India and Southeast Asia, and then across the vast Pacific Ocean, and finally, back home to California. It was a bold plan. The most difficult part would be the Pacific Ocean. The distances between the small islands were very long. There was no room for mistakes. Everything had to be perfect. Amelia and Fred knew the risks. They knew it was dangerous. But the spirit of adventure was stronger than their fear. In June of 1937, Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan climbed into their silver airplane and took off on their final great adventure. Chapter 8: The Long Journey. The second attempt to fly around the world started on June 1, 1937. Amelia and Fred Noonan took off from Miami, Florida. The first part of their journey was a great success. They flew south from Miami to Puerto Rico and then to the coast of South America. They landed in several cities in Venezuela and Brazil. Everywhere they stopped, people were excited to see the famous Amelia Earhart and her amazing silver airplane. She was friendly and smiled for the cameras, but she was also focused on her long journey ahead. From the eastern tip of Brazil, they prepared for the long flight across the Atlantic Ocean to Africa. This was a part of the world Amelia had never flown over before. The flight was long, but it went smoothly. They landed safely in Senegal, a country on the west coast of Africa. Then began the long and difficult flight across the African continent. They flew over deserts and jungles. The weather was often very hot. The air was bumpy. They made stops in several countries, including Mali, Sudan, and Ethiopia. This was not easy flying. The airports were often just simple dirt strips. Getting fuel and making repairs was sometimes difficult. After crossing Africa, they flew to Karachi, which was then part of India. Amelia wrote in her letters home that the journey was fascinating. She was seeing parts of the world she had only read about in books. But she was also getting tired. They had been flying for weeks. The days were long and the work was hard. From India, they flew to Calcutta and then on to Southeast Asia. They flew over Burma, Thailand, and Singapore. The weather was now very different. It was the monsoon season. This meant there were heavy rains and strong thunderstorms almost every day. Flying through these storms was very dangerous. They finally reached a city called Lae in New Guinea. New Guinea is a large island north of Australia. By the time they landed in Lae, they had been traveling for about a month. They had flown over 22,000 miles. They were almost finished. About 3/4 of their journey was complete. They had successfully crossed South America, the Atlantic Ocean, Africa, and Asia. They were both very tired. Amelia was not feeling very well, but only one big part of the journey was left: the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific is the largest ocean in the world. The next part of their flight was the most dangerous and difficult leg of the entire trip. They had to fly from Lae, New Guinea, to a tiny island in the middle of the ocean called Howland Island. Howland Island is very, very small. It is only about 2 miles long and less than a mile wide. It is a tiny speck of land in a massive, empty ocean. Finding it would be extremely difficult. It was like trying to find one small stone in a giant field. A United States Coast Guard ship called the Itasca was waiting near Howland Island. Its job was to help Amelia and Fred find the island. They would use the radio to send signals and talk to the plane. Amelia and Fred prepared the plane in Lae. They rested for a few days. They knew that the next flight was the biggest test of their skills. Everything depended on Fred's navigation and Amelia's flying. On July 2, 1937, they climbed into their silver plane for the last time. They took off from Lae and flew east, out over the vast and empty Pacific Ocean, towards the tiny island they had to find. Chapter 9. The Last Message. The flight from Lae to Howland Island was about 2,500 miles. It was expected to take about 18 hours. Amelia and Fred Noonan took off in the morning. For the first few hours, everything seemed to be going well. Amelia sent radio messages saying the weather was cloudy. The ship, the Itasca, was waiting near Howland Island. The men on the ship were listening carefully to their radios. They were trying to hear messages from Amelia. They were also sending out signals to help her find them. As the day went on, the radio communication started to have problems. Sometimes the men on the Itasca could hear Amelia's voice, but she could not hear them very well. Her messages were short. She said they were flying through clouds. This made it very difficult for Fred Noonan to navigate using the stars. The men on the Itasca became more and more worried. They sent more and more radio signals. They even used the ship's big smokestack to create a large cloud of black smoke. They hoped Amelia could see the smoke and know where to fly. In the early morning of the next day, after flying for many hours, the Itasca started to receive stronger messages from Amelia. Her voice sounded worried. She said they were close to the island, but they could not see it. She said she was running low on fuel. One of her messages was, "Fuel is running low. Been unable to reach you by radio." The men on the ship could hear her, but she could not hear their replies. It was a terrible situation. She was close, but she was lost. Imagine you are in a very big, dark room. You know your friend is in the room, and you can hear their voice, but they cannot hear you when you call their name. You cannot help them find you. This is what it was like for the men on the Itasca. Amelia sent a few more messages. She gave information about their position. She said, "We are flying on a line of position." This was a technical message for the navigator. Then they heard her last message. Her voice was calm but urgent. She said, "We are flying north and south." This probably meant she was flying back and forth, searching for the island. After that message, there was only silence. The radio went quiet. The men on the Itasca called her name again and again. "Amelia, this is Itasca. Do you hear me?" But there was no answer. The silver airplane with Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan inside had disappeared. They were somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, lost in the vast blue emptiness. They never reached Howland Island. They were never heard from again. Chapter 10. The Big Mystery. Amelia's plane was gone. Right away, people started to look for her. It was a very big search. Many ships and airplanes from the American government went to look for Amelia and Fred. The ship Itasca started looking near Howland Island. Soon, more ships and planes came to help. They looked for more than 2 weeks. The search area was huge. It was a big part of the Pacific Ocean. It was bigger than the state of Texas. The searchers looked for anything. They looked for broken pieces of the plane. They looked for oil from the plane in the water. They looked for any sign of the two people. But they found nothing. Not one thing. The silver plane was just gone. After 16 days, the government stopped the big search. They said that Amelia and Fred were probably lost in the ocean. It was a very, very sad day. The great trip ended in a very sad way. Because no one ever found them, a big question started. What happened to Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan? This is a big mystery. For many years, people have asked this question. People have many ideas about what happened. These ideas are called theories. The first idea is the most simple. Many people think this is what happened. The idea is that the plane ran out of gas. Then, it crashed into the ocean. They were near Howland Island, but they could not see it. Without gas, the plane fell into the water. The ocean is very deep there. The plane sank to the bottom. This is a simple and sad end to their story. But there is another idea. Some people think they did not crash in the deep ocean. They think Amelia and Fred landed on a small island with no people. This idea says they were alive for some time on the island. They waited for someone to find them, but no one came. Some people today still look for signs on these small islands. They have found some old things. Maybe the things belong to Amelia, but no one knows for sure. There is a third idea. This idea is like a movie story. This idea says Amelia and Fred were spies for the American government. At that time, Japan had a strong army in the Pacific Ocean. The idea says that Amelia was flying over Japanese islands to take secret pictures. The Japanese army caught her and Fred. They died in a Japanese jail, but there is no real proof for this idea. There is no good reason to believe this story is true. For more than 80 years, people have looked for an answer. They use submarines to look deep in the ocean. They search islands that are far away. They study her last radio messages. But the mystery is still here. No one really knows what happened on that day. The mystery is a big part of Amelia's story. It makes her story more famous. But the mystery is not the most important part of her story. The most important part is her life, not the way she was lost. Chapter 11. What we remember. Amelia Earhart was lost a long time ago, but people have not forgotten her. Her story still makes people feel they can do great things. What we remember about Amelia is her life, not that she disappeared. Amelia was a pioneer. A pioneer is a person who does something new before other people. She was a pioneer with airplanes. She flew planes when most women did not. She showed that women could be great pilots. She showed what a plane could do. She was not just a pilot. She was an explorer of the sky. She also helped women. In her time, many people had old ideas. They said women should only stay home. They said women should not have big jobs or do dangerous things. Amelia showed that these ideas were wrong. She showed that women can do any job they want. A woman can be at home, or she can be a doctor, a teacher, or a pilot in an airplane. Her message was simple. Women can be strong. Women can do what they want to do. She told women to have their own jobs and to not be afraid of hard things. Her life was a great example of this. She did not just talk about it. She lived this way every day. Amelia's story also shows us something about people. People like to explore. People like to do new, exciting things. Amelia's story makes us feel that we can do exciting things too. She had big dreams, and she worked very hard to make her dreams real. She was not afraid to do dangerous things to do something great. Her life teaches us that we should do the things we love. Amelia loved flying. It was her favorite thing in the world. Flying made her feel happy and alive. Her story tells us to find what we love and do it with all our hearts. It also teaches us about being brave. Amelia faced many dangers. She flew in bad storms. Her planes had problems. She flew alone over big, empty oceans. She was probably scared sometimes, but she did not let her fear stop her. Being brave does not mean you are never scared. It means you are scared, but you do the right thing. Today, many things have Amelia Earhart's name. There are schools and streets named for her. People still write books and make movies about her. We remember her as a hero. She was not just a person who was lost. She was a hero who made many people feel that they could do great things too. So, when we think of Amelia Earhart, we should think of a few things. We should think of the brave girl who loved to play outside. We should think of the young woman who worked hard to buy her first plane. We should think of the amazing pilot who flew alone across the ocean. And we should think of the hero who showed everyone that if you have a dream and you work hard, you can do anything. Her body was lost, but the idea of Amelia Earhart will live forever. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories to help you learn English. Thank you for listening.